Anybody that was expecting me to jump up here and start throwing confetti and talking about Happy New Year, you're in the wrong place. But this is the first day of God's calendar year. And as that calendar year has become reality again, I do wish you all a Happy New Year. Like I said, as this gets closer and it gets closer to our sacred calendar of holy days, it appears that the other one is already at work. Apparently, Satan never sleeps either, and always is there, applying pressure to the people of Elohim. Anyone who observes the holy days surely has noticed that every year little bothersome, nettlesome things, and sometimes big things, come right at these holy days, and they continue to catch us. Family members come to us for help with their problems. Anything that can come along that can take us off our game, can take us and take our focus away from the things that we know we should be doing in conjunction with these holy days. All these things are bound to happen, and they do. And believe me, it is no coincidence. This is how Satan works. Those who have no interest in the things of Elohim appear to move through life virtually untouched by these kind of problems. It looks as if they're just all having a good old time. And if we're not careful, we who have problems may find that feeling of woe is me getting to us. This is the observation of the psalmist. He wrote this in Psalms, the 73rd chapter, the first verse. Let's drop anchor there. Psalms, the 73rd chapter, the first verse. A psalm of Asaph. Truly Yahweh is good to Israel, to those who are pure in heart. Even here, he makes a distinctive. But as for me, my feet had almost stumbled. My steps had nearly slipped. For I was envious of the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For they have no pangs until death. In other words, they go through their whole life, and the only thing they feel is the stoppage of the heart and death. What a life, huh? I don't know. You haven't been in those shoes, you don't know. From the outside, their bodies are fat and sleek. Remember now, back in these days, that was considered to be a cool thing. Now we kind of have a little problem with that. But back then, if you were fat and sleek, that meant you were doing well. You were doing okay. You were prosperous. Verse 5, they're not in trouble as others are. They're not stricken like the rest of mankind. Therefore, pride is their necklace. Violence covers them as a garment. Their eyes swell out through fatness. Their hearts overflow with follies. They scoff and speak with malice. Loftily they threaten oppression. They set their mouths against the heavens, and their tongue struts through the earth. Therefore his people turn back to them, and find no fault in them, no matter what they do. Oh, they're okay. Leave them alone. He didn't do that. They always defended him. Verse 11, and they say, how can Yahweh know? Is there knowledge in the Most High? Behold, these are the wicked, always at ease. They increase in riches. All in vain have I kept my heart clean, and washed my hands in incense. That's what he wants you to say. To give up and go back to what you were doing out there. Verse 14, for all the day long I have been stricken and rebuked every morning. If I had said, I will speak thus, I would have betrayed the generation of your children. But when I thought how to understand this, it seemed to me a wearisome task. Until I went into the sanctuary of Yahweh, then I discerned their end. Truly you set them in slippery places. They didn't realize it because they had it good for so long. Truly you set them in slippery places. You make them fall to ruin. How they are destroyed in a moment, swept away utterly by terrors. Like a dream when one awakens. Oh, when you rouse yourself. You despise them as phantoms. When my soul was embittered, when I was pricked in heart, when I was brutish and ignorant, I was like a beast towards you. Nevertheless, I am continually with you. You hold my right hand. You guide me with your counsel. And after, oh, the after, you will receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but you? And there is nothing on earth that I desire besides you. What keeps me going through all of this is not anything I see out here. It's what's coming at the end. It's a different kind of focus. It might look weird sometimes. He seems like that's all he thinks about. That's all it's really worth thinking about. When you really break it down. When you really break it down, the rest of this stuff is, he's already said it's going to burn. Why are you going to stare at the fire? No. Deal with what's going to come after. Not saying that the other isn't important. You deal with those things as you deal with them. But you deal with them with a certain looking forward to what's coming. That reward. But not only for myself. This isn't a selfish pursuit. But the amazing future that is planned for all people. A future that will end disease, end hunger, purify the hearts of the heathen, and eliminate, if they choose not to do better, the incorrigibly wicked. Many people in the world think little of the end while they're down here and things are going well for them. And with the entire world set up to accept, recognize, and celebrate only the days that they that have been hijacked and changed into error by Satan. Few truly know of the holy days of Elohim or wish to observe them. They're always looking for a reason. Oh, you don't have to do that anymore. Why y'all still doing them on holy days? Don't nobody got to do that. Why are you doing that? Most only want to keep the days that they know of. You know, those Catholic hijacked days celebrated by the Western world, you know, Easter. We'll learn about that today. Christmas, Valentine's Day, that Green Day, whatever. I ain't trying to talk about nobody. I'll be nice about it because it's somebody's birthday. You don't choose your birthday. I understand that. It is what it is. But, you know, those Catholic hijacked days celebrated by the Western world in confusion. It's not their fault. They didn't know any better. It went on before they got here. So if you didn't ever bother to look at it and check it out for yourself, how do you know? It is what it is. It don't make you a bad person. It just is what it is. It seems that the churches of God, however, are shrinking. To be honest, in some areas of the world, all churches are shrinking. The church is nearly non-existent in Europe right now. The polling numbers are saddening, and even the statement of Yeshua in Luke 18 appears prophetic. Let's go to Luke, the 18th chapter, the 2nd verse. Oh yeah, we're going to start off and flip some pages and get it right. Luke, the 18th chapter, the 2nd verse, where it says, saying, a certain judge was in a certain city, not fearing Elohim and not respecting man. And a widow was in that city, and she came to him saying, avenge me from my adversary. And for a time he would not. But after these things, he said to himself, even if I do not fear Elohim and do not respect man, yet because this widow causes me trouble, I will avenge her, that not coming to the end, she wear me down. In other words, I might as well get it done, because she's going to keep on bugging me until I do it anyway. So let me do it and get it out of my face, what he was saying. But there was a lesson in that. Some of you, we pray once and something doesn't happen. Oh, I ain't praying no more. No, what he's saying here, keep praying. You've got some that have a shirt that said PUSH, push until something happens. Pray until something happens. That's what he's saying here. Verse 6. And Elohim said, hear what the unrighteous judge says. And will Elohim not at all execute the avengement of his elect? Those crying to him day and night, also having been long suffering over them? I say to you that he will carry out the avengement of them speedily. But the Son of Man coming then asked, will he find faith on the earth? In other words, will we even find people that have enough faith to stick to it and continue to pray? That's the question. Though this is true that Elohim will avenge his elect, yet will he find his elect faithful? The danger is not that Elohim will be unfaithful. He will surely be true to his promises. But the danger is that his elect, his afflicted people, will become discouraged, will not persevere in prayer, will not continue to have confidence in him, and will under heavy trials sink into despondency through the lack of true teachers of the true word of Elohim. The sole meaning of this phrase, therefore, is that there is more danger that his people would grow weary than that Elohim would be found unfaithful and fail to avenge his elect. For this cause, Messiah spoke the parable, and by the design of the parable, this passage is to be interpreted. The world is falling away from the true faith, and it is as if Satan is preparing it for the end time religion that in truth is not faith. Yet the people seem prepared for it, almost want it. Anything that barely passes for faith is fully accepted, whether it is of Elohim or not. Notice what the biggest religion, growing faster than any other in leaps and bounds with less proof of its existence than any. What is it? Thank you. That's it. Islam. Islam presently is the largest growing religion in the world. All others are dismissed as inconsequential, even in this country. Even the West now makes it easier to follow Islam than to follow the holy days of Elohim. And because of these circumstances, we need something. And here's what we need, and that's our title today: tools to help us prepare for the holy days. And this is true. We need truth. We need a truth which will prepare us to properly understand and keep God's holy seasons and obey his will. And we've already got it. Right here. Right here. We've already got it. 66 tools. 66 tools we have. And a few to help to go along with them. But we have to use them, and we have to trust in them and believe that it is correct that these things will be handled properly. We must do this. I'll wait about 3 seconds, then I'm going to come out there and grab that phone and throw it out there.
I don't blame you.
Let's understand something. This is becoming a rarity in this modern world. This faith in a true Elohim. Oh, we hear a whole lot about religion on TV, on the radio. Got thousands of books about the Bible. They're bound. But biblical truth is becoming rarer and rarer by the day. Barna and Pew Research and other pollsters are lamenting these facts, but they reveal a truth that few want to face. The religious profile of the world is rapidly changing, driven primarily by differences in fertility rates and the sizes of youth populations among the world's major religions. It's fascinating that everybody wants to worry about youth, and the only folks that are still going to church are we old folks. Yeah, me too. 58, that's up there. No, don't. Oh, look, I don't worry about how I look. Try a couple of days in here with their heart going, bucka. Yeah. Things are real. We deal with it in honesty up here. But all of these things are coming into play, and the world's religions as well. A lot of people aren't even seeking. They just get mad over here. I'll go over there. Something happens over there. I'm mad. We'll go over here. Oh, I don't like that thing. He looked at me funny. I'm going over there. Something happens in one church, you get mad, let's go to another one. Christians, in name, if not practice, will remain the largest religious group, but Islam will grow faster. And by things that keep going the way they're going, they claim that by the year 2050, Islam will be the largest religion on the planet. That's interesting, but I wouldn't worry about 2050 from this side of the coin, if you want to be real. I wouldn't worry about it. But all of the information that came up was all very interesting, but the fact of the matter is, the biggest groups are being found in Africa. And most of them are Sabbath keeping. That's some fascinating stuff to me. That's the stuff that I find interesting. It would appear that Elohim is doing something in the cradle of civilization, rocking the cradle, if you will, one more time. That no one is responding to his rock anywhere else in the religious world as they are in Africa. This is no accident. It seems that Western interference, or what they don't like to hear that word, but it's real, colonization, has turned many Africans to a true faith in God. And anytime they hear the old colonial stuff, they kind of turn away from it. But you see, as we move into these holy seasons, you contrast that with the fact that we see more and more fragmentation among the holy people here in the West, especially in America, especially through politics of all things. Nearly all who keep these seasons are keeping them to some degree by private interpretations of when to keep God's holy days. They all started today, but you look back and you see that just about everybody's doing holy days on different days. Others don't even deal with them. They keep the traditional Catholicized days. The biblically documented holy days and Hebrew historical days, they try to keep them according to the way that, they should be kept this way. Another attempt to cover all bases so as not to be wrong, and he's already said, if you can't do everything, you do what I said do. We get lost there. The keeping of the days of God are plainly laid out in the Bible, yet so many opinions are out here now that fly in the face of its truth that few can agree on how or when to keep them anymore. This confusion will, if it continues, further diminish the number of elect in the world. So that there may be a question as to whether faith will be found when Yeshua returns. It's imperative, however, that we retain a biblical understanding of what Elohim expects of his people, so as not to be found outside of the realm of the faithful when he returns in power. And I didn't say if, I said when. Because you got ministers now that say, that's just that. There's nobody coming back. We have to do this for ourselves. And I can only say good luck with that. I don't believe in luck. But I don't believe in luck. Luck has no place here, but good luck with that. Read between the lines. The entire plan of salvation, you see, is wrapped up in his holy days. To ignore the holy days is to lose the truth of Elohim's entire plan of salvation. Yet, most of the world dismisses the holy days as Jewish because of the leftover anti-Semitism of the followers of the long-cloaked bigotry of one Martin Luther. This is real, and it has had an impact on the faith here in the West. In studying further, we're also finding that Luther's opinions about the Bible seemed to sway the early fathers, which has a lot of impact on what is being taught in Christendom now. Not necessarily in the churches of God, but you can see some residue from that hate here also. This man, Martin Luther, accounts for much of the persistent ignoring of the holy days by many Protestant churches. Note some of his quotes concerning books of the Bible. This was just shattering to me. I remember for years, people about, what a great giant Martin Luther was. We even had one black leader that was kind of tangentially named after Martin Luther King. But notice this, he spoke of the book of Job. He attacked it as false. He says, Job spoke not as it stands written in his book, but only had such thoughts. How you know what the man thought? It is merely the argument of a fable. It is probable that Solomon wrote and made this book. Doesn't say that anywhere in the book. Where did he get that from? Never mind. He criticized Ecclesiastes. He said Ecclesiastes ought to have been more complete. There's too much incoherent matter in it. Solomon did not, therefore, write this book. Apparently he liked chasers. Oh, never mind. Apparently he liked Solomon. He spoke of throwing the book of Esther into the Lebay River in Germany. He says, The book of Esther I toss into the little bay. I am such an enemy to the book of Esther. Wonder why? That I wish it did not exist. Oh, he tells us. For it Judaizes too much. He spoke of the book of Jonah as a lie. He said, this history of Jonah is so monstrous that it's absolutely incredible. And I remember hearing something like that from the Pope about 6 months ago. So you see it's coming together on us. We just don't seem to be aware. Further, Martin Luther had little use for the first 5 books of the Bible. What did they call the first 5 books of the Bible? Thank you. The Torah. And you think that somebody isn't going to whiz on the Torah and think that people aren't going to suddenly decide, let's cut the book in half? He had more influence than he should have had. Notice what he says about the Pentateuch. We have no wish either to see or hear Moses. Martin Luther hated the Jews, which may be why he was against Esther, the Pentateuch, and other parts of the Hebrew Scriptures. Notice what Martin Luther advises his followers to do to Jews. See if any of this sounds familiar in modern parlance. They should burn down Jewish schools and synagogues. Aren't we seeing that now? From the top to the bottom? Let me shut up. And to throw pitch and sulfur into the flames. To destroy their homes, to confiscate their ready money in gold and silver. To take from them their sacred books, even the whole Bible, and if that doesn't help matters, to hunt them out of the country like mad dogs. And it gets worse. You see, the more we learn about Martin Luther, the more we realize the true reason why so little of Elohim's truth is left in the Protestant church. This is information that was held back for decades in order to preserve Luther's reputation. Who cares about Luther's reputation? You ought to worry about the direction of the church. But the truth will bring forth the truth of Elohim. The lack of Protestant teaching may well be one of the reasons for the sudden growth of Sabbath keeping in sub-Saharan Africa, because they don't have to hear all of this nonsense. This tool should help us to understand that much of Protestant ethos is rooted in the veiled hatred of Luther to all things Jewish or Hebraic. The refusal to use the correct translations of Hebrew names, even of the Messiah, all of this came from the poisoned mind of Martin Luther and all those who followed him, whether they understood it or whether it was something that was third-tier mental mind play, if you will. The truth had to come forward, though, in order for the people of Elohim to understand this truth and the roots of his word. These same lies have kept much of the world in the dark as to when a year actually begins. The ignorance continues unabated. Yahweh made it clear that his year does not begin in the middle of winter. He wouldn't start anything in a time of death, a time of cold, a time of freezing. He gave clear instructions to who? Oh, that's right, Luther doesn't like Moses. Further making me wonder, did Luther believe in Elohim at all? Note Yahweh's relationship with Moses. Let's go to Exodus, the 12th chapter, the first verse. Exodus, the 12th chapter, the first verse, where it says, Yahweh said to Moses, wonder did he ever talk to Martin Luther? Shut up, Ray. Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, this Abib shall be for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Again, according to the moons, which has fallen in March this year, thus the first day of this new sacred year is today, March 17th. The first dark moon clearing the vernal equinox, which appeared last night. Or should I say, we know it was there. It was kind of dark, so we couldn't see it, but we knew it was there. We're not expected to act as the world acts, though. There's no need to yell, scream, shoot our guns, to wake up some sleepy God and remind him to start the new year. Because our God, our Elohim, knows full well when that is, because he created it. But in all honesty, if you ask him, he'll tell you we've had far too much gunplay in this world already for any time, especially the beginning of any year. Ask all of those mothers and fathers and uncles who have lost children on the south side of almost any city that has a south side. In the ghetto. It is what it is. But again, we're reminded of the feasts. Let us make particular note of whose feasts the Bible says they are. Let's go to Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, the first verse. Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, the first verse, where it says, Yahweh spoke to Moses. Wow, he made a habit of that, didn't he? Must have liked the guy. Must have liked him. Must have saw something good in him. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, these are the appointed feasts of the Jews. Oh, wait, nah. Messed up. Let's go back and read that again the right way. Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, these are the appointed feasts of Yahweh, that you shall proclaim as holy convocations. They are my, making it crystal clear, appointed feasts. And in reading through Leviticus, we find all of the feast days of Yahweh are listed, including the weekly Sabbath, as the Sabbath is a weekly feast day of rest. It is set in place for one reason, to set his people apart for a sacred purpose. Now, often scoffers note that these were, and you'll hear it all the time, oh, those were Old Testament feasts, implying that they were not kept in the New Testament. Yet notice that Yeshua and his disciples kept these as well. And notice where these scriptures and events are found. Let's go to John, the 2nd chapter, the 13th verse. John, the 2nd chapter, the 13th verse. Now it's going to get interesting. You're going to learn something today. Something we already knew, but we didn't hear this. John, the 2nd chapter, the 13th verse, where it says, and the Passover of the Judeans was near. And Yeshua went up to Jerusalem. Now, quickly, I want to point something out. The word here used for Passover is, for those who are studying and who have maybe a concordance, G G3957. G3957, which is the word Pasha. Pasha. It means Passover. Neutral noun, transliterated from the Hebrew Pesach. The great sacrifice and festival of the Judeans, which was instituted in commemoration of Elohim's or Yahweh's sparing the Jews when he destroyed the firstborn of the Egyptians. It was celebrated on the 14th day of the month of Nisan or Abib. For the institution and particular laws of this festival, see Exodus 12, which you can do that on your own time. But I want you to notice something here that should clear up yet another little mystery for those who will accept it. This was interesting to me. Maybe it'll be interesting to you because in all of our reading, I don't think we've come across this more than once or twice. But let's go to Acts, the 12th chapter, the 1st verse. This is mind-blowing stuff for those who like their minds blown. Acts, the 12th chapter, the 1st verse. Now, about that time, Herod the king stretched forth his hand to vex certain of the church. And he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And because he saw it pleased the Judeans, he proceeded further to take Peter also. Everyone read the part in parentheses together, if you've got it there. It should say something like, what does it say? These were the days of unleavened bread. Okay. Verse 4. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after, what you got? Interesting. You know what's in the original King James? Easter. But intending to, after Easter, to bring him forth to the people. Peter, therefore, was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto Elohim for him. Now, first of all, note that the noting of the editors is a little interesting here, though not in the original text, that these were the days of unleavened bread, as noted here. Further proof that these were kept in the New Testament. Also, note that that word has been changed to Passover in all of the newer translations, but in the original King James, which most people still slavishly read, it is Easter, which got to be confusing to you if you just read that and keep going. But you see, that word Easter somehow got translated from that same G39570 that we plainly saw translated Passover in John 2:13. Interesting. They got it right, but by now everybody else is, oh no, it's Easter. Duh. If we can see this, there must be, therefore, some other reason why all the other Bible readers can't see these and other things. Hadn't thought about that, huh? Think about it. It's real. There are 2 reasons. One reason for those who claim Judaism. Let's go to 2 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter, the 13th verse. 2 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter, the 13th verse. Where Paul says, and we are not like Moses, who put a veil over his face so that the sons of Israel could not steadfastly look to the end of the thing being done away. But their thoughts were blinded. For until the present, the same veil remains on the reading of the Old Testament, not taken away. But this veil has been done away in Messiah. But until this day, when Moses is read, the veil is on their hearts. But whenever it turns that heart to Elohim, notice this, the veil shall be taken away. And Elohim is that spirit, and where the spirit of Elohim is, there is liberty or freedom from the lies. In other words, he's not even going to let you see it until you see him clearly, because anything that you hear from anyone else can't possibly pull you any closer to the truth. As a matter of fact, it might push you further away. But notice the answer for those who blindly accept the lies taught in knowledge, thinking that they're right when they're wrong. Ministers and laity who have heard the truth and boldly ignore it continue to teach lies and continue performing false miracles and telling people that the day changed somehow. Please notice this little gem we found in 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, the 1st verse. 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, the 1st verse, where it says, "Therefore, having this ministry, even as we obtain mercy, we do not faint." In other words, no matter what happens, we keep going in this way. "But we have renounced the hidden things of shame, not walking in craftiness, nor corrupting the word of Elohim, but by the revelation of the truth, commending ourselves to every conscience of men before Elohim. But also, if our gospel is being hidden, it has been hid in those being lost." How are they being lost? They're hearing the truth clearly, but don't accept it, even when they know. How many ministers have we talked to that will tell you, "Oh, I know when the Sabbath is. I know about the holy days, but if I preach that stuff to my people," what did they say? "I'd lose my congregation." And that's more important than losing your soul. But that's how it is. He knew. That's why it says here, it has been hidden in those being lost. Words are very important, and how they're said are very important. He just said those who are lost. He says being lost. In other words, it's a process that's not complete. Its incompleteness proves that if you put the brakes on and change direction, you might be able to get back on the right path. Verse 4, "In whom the God of this age has blinded the thoughts of the unbelieving, so that the brightness of the gospel of the glory of Messiah, who is the image of Elohim, should not dawn on them. For we do not proclaim ourselves, but Messiah Yeshua as Elohim, and ourselves your slaves for the sake of Yeshua," not some minister who needs another Cadillac. "Because it is Elohim who said, out of darkness light shall shine, and who shone in our hearts to give the brightness of the knowledge of the glory of Elohim in the face of Yeshua Messiah." There's all kinds of little hints here. There's all kinds of little tools here if your spirit is open to accept these things. Let's go back to John, the 2nd chapter, the 23rd verse. John, the 2nd chapter, the 23rd verse. "Now, when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing." Speaking of Yeshua. The entire story is in Luke, the 2nd, 7th chapter, the 1st through the 19th verses, but we'll surely read that at some point over the next couple of weeks, so we don't have to do it there. But note what Yeshua says to us all in Luke, the 22nd chapter, the 19th verse. Very important. Very important. Luke, the 22nd chapter, the 19th verse, where it says, "And he took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave to them, saying, 'This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' And the blood in this, and the cup in this manner after supper, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant in my blood, even that which is poured out for you.'" Now, note that the word translated here as "in remembrance" is the Greek H364. H364, female noun, anamnesis. Anamnesis, a memorial. As applied to the New Testament Passover observance, "in remembrance of me," means that the participant should do this as a memorial. That means that they do it at the proper time annually, once a year, not once a month, not as many times as you want, as you hear so many times. "Oh, we do it a lot so we can." No, he said once a year, annually. Once a year as a memorial to remember Yeshua and the expiatory sacrifice of his death and ultimate resurrection. You see, over the course of these days, we will surely hear more details of these holy days, proving even more easily that they are not eliminated from a New Testament understanding, but those who have a New Testament understanding have chosen to eliminate them. That's a little different. In this, you see, we will have a fuller understanding of why we keep them all, and have a more full understanding from his word. And we'll understand why many in the Christian, Protestant, or evangelical world ignore them, oppose them, come violently against them. You ever try to really explain to somebody, maybe, I'm not saying you should do it, but can you look at the holy days? How many of you have literally had people all but attack you in this? "You're wrong. You're wrong. You're trying to turn me against God." You hear craziness. It's an almost animalistic anger, as if you've said something horrible. They disparage these days to their hurt, not ours, replacing them with Babylonian and pagan days that we have been expressly told to avoid. But you see, perhaps it is time to pray more fervently than ever that his prophecy come true. It is, we know that, but many don't recognize that prophecy as truth because of how Elohim is doing it. He's doing it his way. He's not doing it the way we want to do it. Matthew, the 24th chapter, the 14th verse. Matthew, the 24th chapter, the 14th verse, where it says, "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for witness unto all nations," or ethnos, "and then shall the end come." The Evangelion, G2098, or the Evangel, or good news, or good message of the kingdom, shall be preached or passed out, G2748. And note that Elohim allows it to be done by angels in its only pure form. Man may come by, and it says that he will come as two witnesses, Why? Because of the fumbling, dissembling, and private interpretations such as Martin Luther's and others, which have diluted the message, or G2748, caruso, or message, preached, published, or made available to all the world. In other words, everybody didn't get it all. Why? Because we didn't send it the right way. Don't feel too guilty about it. We're all guilty. Every generation is guilty. That's why he's going to have to send 2 witnesses to make sure it gets everywhere. And it will get there. He said it would. I believe him. And note that the word nations is ethnos, or all people. Trust me, Elohim will make sure that a true version of his evangel, or good news, will get to all people in the world before Yeshua returns. So that when he comes, they'll have a clear picture of what they're dealing with and perhaps repent and be saved. But with the insanity currently in play in the world, our mission, if we choose to accept it, is to understand his true word, using the tools available to us, live according to that word, and know it well enough to explain it to any who ask us about it. And we're told that in 1 Peter, the 3rd chapter, the 15th verse. 1 Peter, the 3rd chapter, the 15th verse, where it says, instead, sanctify Yeshua as a Messiah in your hearts. Always be ready to give an answer to anyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is within you. Yet with humility and reverence, keeping a clear conscience, so that whatever you are accused of, those who abuse you for your good conduct in Messiah may be put to shame. Let us all go into this fresh, new, sacred year as people who believe in it, know it's real. Let's go into it with a renewed fire to do the will of Elohim and according to his plan, transform in some small way. Even if it's just in the little world we occupy, the few people we're around, let us show the people around us the best example of Elohim that we can. Transform our little worlds into a fair and loving place where all people will thrive and live to their full Elohim-led potential. And for those still seeking or aren't sure yet, notice this prophecy for the blinded Jews, and he flipped it off and also made it for those Gentiles who maybe think, I don't have to do that. And they'll come to the end time and maybe they'll realize that they have to make up their minds. Isaiah, the 42nd chapter, the 14th verse. Somebody said a long time ago once, he says, sometimes you're going to have somebody come up to you and tell you something you don't want, that you're going to hear something you really needed to hear from somebody that you really didn't want to hear it from. That's happened to me so many times. But here it is, he's doing it again. He's bringing you something to the New Testament person, but he brought it to him in the Old Testament. Isaiah, the 42nd chapter, the 14th verse. I have kept silent from of old. I have been still and held myself back like a woman in labor. I now cry out. I pant and gasp at once. I lay waste mountains and hills, and I dry up all their plants, and I shall make rivers become coastlands. And I dry up pools, and I shall lead the blind by a way they have not known, in paths they have not known. I lead them. I make darkness light before them, and crooked places straight. These matters I shall do for them, and I shall not forsake them. But here, note the subtle warning he speaks to those who see their error but refuse to turn from it. Verse 17, those who trust in idols, who say to the molded images, you are our mighty ones, shall be turned back and utterly ashamed. It's time to find the truth and either believe it and live, or I don't have to say it. Because you see, he has given us tools that allow us to avoid it. 66 of them. Howdy, old man, you stay right here. We must continue to use them. God bless you all.